Hello and welcome back to Lingering Light, your nightly harbor in a world that often feels like it's spinning just a little too fast. I am so truly glad you found your way to us tonight. Go ahead and get comfortable, fluff that pillow, check the temperature of your tea, and let the frantic energy of the outside world simply stop at your doorstep. You don't have to fix anything for the next 20 minutes. Tonight, we are meeting a man who didn't start his life in a marble palace or a hushed library. His name was Epictetus. He was born a slave in the Roman Empire, lived with a crippled leg, and owned nothing but a straw mat and a single clay lamp. Yet, by all accounts, he was freer than the emperor himself. Why? Because he discovered a secret weapon that he called the dichotomy of control. He believed that our misery doesn't come from the world being messy, it comes from our confused, arrogant attempt to control things that simply aren't our business. He famously taught that our only real job in this life is to know the difference between what we own and what we are just visiting. To help us put down the heavy buckets we were never meant to carry, let's meet Eleanor, the General Vance. Eleanor is 76 and a retired high school principal from the windy streets of Chicago. For 40 years, Eleanor ran her school, her household, and her neighborhood like a finely tuned Swiss watch. She honestly believed that if she worried enough, planned enough, and leaned on people hard enough, the world would finally behave itself. Now that she's retired, she has redirected all that high-octane managerial energy toward her adult children and the 24-hour news cycle. She spends her days calling her son to tell him exactly how to sleep train his toddlers and staying up until 2 a.m. worrying about the humidity levels for her niece's outdoor wedding 3 states away. Eleanor is exhausted, her jaw is perpetually tight, and she's starting to feel a bit bitter. For the first time in her life, the world isn't following her curriculum for a perfect Tuesday. That is, until she sat in her quiet sunroom and opened the Discourses of Epictetus, stumbling upon a sentence that felt like a sudden, sharp, and utterly glorious permission to quit her job as CEO of the universe. If you have the right idea about what is yours and what is not, no one will ever compel you, no one will hinder you, and you will not find fault with anyone. Eleanor's typical Tuesday morning used to be an Olympic-level event of mental gymnastics. She would wake up at 6 a.m., even though she had nowhere to be, and immediately begin a frantic mental inventory. She'd fret about her daughter's career trajectory, the neighbor's suspicious-looking lawn weeds, and the geopolitical implications of the rising cost of organic eggs. She truly felt that her worry was a protective shield. She believed that if she stopped fretting for even 5 minutes, the entire neighborhood would spontaneously combust. She was the self-appointed architect of everyone's well-being. She opened Epictetus and read, "The chief task in life is simply this, to identify and separate matters so that I can say clearly to myself which are externals not under my control, and which have to do with the choices I actually control." Eleanor squinted at the page, her reading glasses perched precariously on the tip of her nose. "Epictetus, dear," she whispered to the empty room, "are you telling me that my daughter's promotion is none of my business? Are you suggesting that the neighbor's crabgrass is an external event, like a solar eclipse or a bad hair day?" She realized she had been living with one giant, overflowing bucket for her whole life, trying to carry the entire world's problems through a crowded room without spilling a drop. It was a heavy, sloshing mess of other people's opinions and unpredictable weather. Epictetus suggested a much simpler setup: 2 buckets. Bucket A, my opinions, my intentions, my desires, and my own actions. Bucket B, everything else. The economy, the traffic, the past, the future, and, most painfully for Eleanor, the baffling choices of other people. "I've been trying to carry Bucket B since the Eisenhower administration," Eleanor realized, a weary, dry laugh escaping her lips. "No wonder I have a permanent knot in my left shoulder. I'm trying to manage the wind and the rain while I'm ignoring the only thing I actually own, my own reaction to the storm." She looked at her phone, which was currently buzzing with a news alert about a drought in a country she couldn't find on a map, and she realized that drought was firmly in Bucket B. She took a sip of her coffee and decided that, for today, Bucket B could sit on the floor. She wasn't being lazy, she was finally minding her own soul. One afternoon, Eleanor's son, David, didn't return her call for the 3rd day in a row. Usually, this would send Eleanor into a spectacular spiral of "what did I do to offend him?" or "he is so disorganized, He probably forgot to pay his phone bill again. She would spend hours drafting a stern, three-point lecture in her head about the vital importance of family communication and the basic tenets of common courtesy. Her blood pressure would spike to the rhythm of a drum solo, and her entire evening would be hijacked by a ghost conversation with a son who wasn't even in the room. But this time, she looked at the open book on her lap. Epictetus was being his usual, blunt self. If you think that you have control over things that are in the power of others, you will lament, you will be disturbed, and you will find fault both with gods and men. Eleanor took a long, slow breath, feeling the air fill her lungs instead of the usual indignation. Okay, let's be forensic about this, she mused. Is David's phone etiquette in my bucket or his? The answer was as clear as a Chicago winter morning. It was firmly, annoyingly, in his. She could control her decision to hit the call button, but she had 0% control over his decision to swipe answer. If I am disturbed by his silence, she realized, it's not actually his silence that's poking me in the ribs. It's my own ironclad opinion that he should call me back within a 4-hour window. That opinion? That's mine. I can edit that. I can delete that. I can toss that opinion in the trash with the junk mail. By shifting the problem from David's behavior to her own expectations, Eleanor suddenly felt a surge of real power. She didn't need him to change his personality for her to have a pleasant, peaceful afternoon. She poured herself a glass of iced tea, extra lemon, just the way she liked it, picked up her knitting, and truly enjoyed the profound silence of the house. She wasn't a victim of his neglect anymore. She was a woman who had decided she simply couldn't be bothered by things she didn't vote on. She realized that not my problem wasn't an act of coldness, but an act of profound self-respect. It was the ultimate do not disturb sign for her heart. As Eleanor aged, she found herself increasingly annoyed by her stiff joints and the way her eyesight seemed to have developed a soft focus filter without her permission. She felt betrayed by her own biology, as if her body were a disgruntled employee trying to stage a walkout. She spent a small fortune on fancy supplements that tasted like chalk and spent hours at the doctor's office, hoping to fix the natural process of gravity. She felt like a failing building manager trying to prop up a crumbling skyscraper with duct tape and wishful thinking. Epictetus, who lived his whole life with a crippled leg and never complained about it, offered a perspective that felt like a cool breeze on a humid day. You are a little soul carrying around a corpse. Your body is just finely molded clay. It is not yours, it is a tool given to you for a time. If it breaks, do not say, I have lost it, but I have returned it to the earth. Eleanor looked down at her hands, the liver spots, the swollen knuckles, the rings that didn't quite fit anymore. For 76 years, she had thought those hands were Eleanor. But they weren't. They were just the gloves Eleanor wore to hold her grandchildren and plant her petunias. If I can't control the weather inside my own knees, she realized with a wry smile, I can certainly control whether I spend the afternoon whining about it to anyone who will listen. My arthritis might be in bucket B, but my sense of humor? That's 100% in bucket A. She stopped viewing her aging as a personal failure or a management crisis that required a board meeting. She began to treat her body with the gentle, detached care you would give a borrowed car. You keep the oil changed and the tires inflated, but you don't lose your mind when the paint starts to peel or the muffler rattles. By detaching her happiness from her physical perfection, she discovered a fountain of youth that had nothing to do with expensive skin creams. Her spirit was the only thing on the planet that didn't have to wrinkle, and that was the only thing she truly had a title deed to. Eleanor often struggled with a quiet, nagging sense of fear of missing out, even at her age. When she heard about a friend's grandchild getting into Harvard, or another friend's husband buying a sun-drenched winter home in Florida, she felt a sharp, tiny pinch of lack. Why not me, she'd wonder, her mind instantly doing a tally of her own life's rewards. I worked just as hard. I was just as organized. Where's my winter home? Where's my Ivy League brag? Epictetus gave her a beautiful, elegant metaphor to carry in her pocket. Remember that you ought to behave in life as you would at a grand banquet. As something is being passed around and finally comes to your place, reach out your hand and take a moderate helping. Does it pass you by? Do not try to stop it. Has it not yet come to you? Do not burn in desire for it, but wait until it arrives in front of you. Eleanor visualized life as a grand, slow-moving dinner party with a very long table. For years, she had been that frantic guest who was leaning across three people, trying to grab the serving dish before it even reached her side. She had been the one shouting at the waiter because the table next to her got the better cut of prime rib or a larger slice of chocolate cake. "I've been so busy staring at everyone else's plate with a magnifying glass," she whispered, "that I haven't even tasted the perfectly good dessert sitting right in front of me." She realized that her turn at certain flashy joys might have passed, and other, quieter joys might still be making their slow way around the table. Her job wasn't to manage the kitchen, it was simply to be a polite and graceful guest. She decided to be truly grateful for the helpings she had already received, to be genuinely happy for the person next to her who just got a win, and to never, ever let her dinner be ruined by the size of someone else's portion. As Eleanor entered the final section of the discourses, she encountered the most radical and daring idea of all, the open door. Epictetus taught that as long as we have our reason, we are never truly trapped in any cage. Has the room become smoky? If it is only moderately smoky, I will stay. If it is excessively smoky and I can no longer breathe, I will leave. Remember always, the door is open. You are never a prisoner unless you agree to the bars. For Eleanor, this didn't just mean the grand exit at the end of life, it meant the end of any situation that felt like a psychological prison. She realized she had stayed in smoky rooms of her own making for decades, toxic friendships that drained her, bitter grudges she polished like silverware, and miserable habits she maintained out of sheer momentum, simply because she thought she had to. She believed a general never retreats, even if the building is on fire. "I am in this room because I choose to be," she told herself as she looked at a long-standing committee obligation that had long ago lost its meaning and now only brought her stress and resentment. "If I am staying in this position that makes my stomach churn, I have no right to complain about the smoke. I am the one standing here with my hand on the doorknob, refusing to turn it." This realization gave her a terrifying, wonderful sense of agency. She stopped using the phrase "I have to" and started using the far more honest "I choose to." Even the small things changed. I don't have to cook a massive, 20-dish Thanksgiving dinner that leaves me weeping with exhaustion. I choose to do it because I love the look on my grandson's face. And if the smoke gets too thick? I'll order the best pizza in Chicago and we'll laugh about it. By acknowledging her freedom to walk out the door, she discovered a much deeper and more authentic reason to stay. She was no longer a martyr for her family or her neighborhood, she was a joyful volunteer. Her life wasn't a series of events happening to her, it was a series of doors she was consciously choosing to walk through every single morning with her head held high. My dear friends, at Lingering Light, Eleanor Vance discovered that being the general of the entire world was an exhausting, unpaid, and utterly impossible job that she was never actually hired for in the first place. Epictetus's message is a gift of pure, unadulterated relief for those of us who have spent our lives trying to fix the unfixable. If you want anything that is not your own, you will inevitably lose what is truly your own. Don't trade your inner peace for a world you can't control. Don't trade your precious evening joy for a son who won't call or a neighbor who won't mow his grass. You have a kingdom of your own, and it's a magnificent one. It is the space between your ears and the steady beat of your own heart. It is the only place on earth where your word is absolute law. Govern that kingdom with kindness, decorate it with humor, and let the rest of the world be exactly the beautiful, chaotic mess that it is. I have a question for you tonight. What is one thing currently sitting in your bucket be, that heavy bucket of things you cannot control, that you are finally, officially ready to put down? Is it a grown child's lifestyle choice? A political worry? A past regret that you've been carrying for 20 years? What would your life look like tomorrow morning if you simply looked at that problem and said, "That is not my business"? Share your bucket B items in the comments below. Let's help each other lighten the load. And until our next gathering, mind your own bucket. Stay sovereign. Stay in the light, the clear, unshakable, beautiful light of your own soul. Good night, dear friends. You are free. Stay light.